Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Tomorrow the church, and tonight is the Vespers for the feast of the Lord's entry into Egypt. This is a special feast for us Copts because it was the beginning or the seed of our faith. Our ancestors, our forefathers, believed and accepted Christ through the words and the miracles of St. Mark. But the seed was sown by Christ himself when he entered into Egypt. Abuna Krolos had a nice idea that we maybe go through some of the places where the Lord stopped and the Holy Family stopped. And I put pictures and maps. I don't usually make PowerPoints. I've never made a PowerPoint, I don't think. So we'll see how it goes. The first question, as we can see, is why did Jesus visit Egypt? We'll read from the Gospel of St. Matthew tomorrow, and you'll hear the story. But it goes, Christ entered into Egypt after the Archangel Gabriel appeared to St. Joseph in a dream, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken out by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." And so let's go through a couple of the reasons why Jesus visited Egypt. By staying in Egypt or going to Egypt, the prophecy of Isaiah was fulfilled. "See, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and comes to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them." So this actually was confirmed, as we'll see what happened. And then we are this. So in this verse, St. Mary is this cloud, the swift cloud that comes into Egypt. St. Mary and St. Joseph and Salome came and escorted Christ into Egypt to protect him from Herod, as the story goes. As you all know, Herod wished to kill the child and killed many children in his stead. But because the Lord came to Egypt, he was saved. So Egypt became like his protection. This last point that I have here, I couldn't really do a PowerPoint thing, so you see all the points all at once. Christ was not scared of Herod, but entered into Egypt to bless our country. So there was many things that could have been done instead of fleeing. But the Lord chose to flee to Egypt, and Egypt became a protector of sorts for him. And like I said, more so than a protection, what it did was that the Lord began to plant the seed of our faith in Egypt. And that's why it's a feast of the Lord, because when Christ entered Egypt, he opened the eyes of the Egyptians for the first time. He did many miracles, as we'll see. So I put a little map here. I used Google Maps to do like a walking thing, but that doesn't really work right. So as you can see, they probably walked along the Mediterranean up at the coast here, and it was a few days' journey. And so it was a very also dangerous journey. Anytime you travel in that time, it was dangerous. But you can see they started there around Bethlehem, and the first city they went in was the city called Basta town. So what I have here is a picture of the ruins that are in the city now. The Holy Family entered into this ancient town where Christ caused a spring to arise from the ground. So he did this in multiple towns. All of a sudden, a spring arose. And so as we know, because we lived there or visited there, Egypt is desert mostly. So for him to make a spring rise from the ground is, of course, in itself a miraculous event, so that he gives water to the people in the towns where he went. But also it is kind of symbolic of the light and the water that he sprang forth throughout all of Egypt. The enlightenment of Christ is like the symbolic of that water. So this is the first time. Basta town is like a town named after like the cat goddess of Egypt. So there was a lot of stones and statues and idols. And this is the first time also that Isaiah's prophecy was fulfilled, where Christ crumbled the idols. And so the people got mad that he did that, and they got worried that this was something odd, that Christ was doing this. This little child was causing these idols to fall down and break. So that's why I have a picture of the ruins that are actually there. And so they turned hostile to the Holy Family, so they left that place and went further south. So they went from this place, Basta town, it's outside of Zieg, and then they went to this, the pronunciations are going to be bad, but so let's try. And they went to this city called Mosterod, okay? So there's this place, the family entered in a city called Mosterod, which was later called El Mahamma, or bathing place. Tradition says St. Mary bathed Christ in this place, and that's why it's called this bathing place. So this church has the place where the St. Mary bathed Christ. So it's like you can take a tour throughout of Egypt, obviously, and go to all these churches named after St. Mary. And so this is one. What I actually did is I read about where he went and where the Holy Family went, and I went to like the Google Maps and actually pulled pictures from the churches themselves so that we could verify that these places existed. So this was the first thing. And then they went to Samanud, which is where, of course, the famous church of St. Abanub is. It's called St. Mary and St. Abanub. Tradition says that the Virgin Mary washed the clothes of Christ in this granite trough. So this is there, this granite trough is there in the church. And so all of these things were left as a remembrance or a reminder of Christ's visit. So this is the granite trough that St. Mary bathed or washed the clothes of Christ in, and they still have it there. Then they traveled to a city called Saka. Saka was also later named Peka-Isos. Peka-Isos means foot of Christ. So there was a place where the foot of Christ stepped on, and so they have this stone still here in that place. And so this is a picture of it with the imprint of the child Christ's foot. They also visited this place. The tree of the Virgin is a tree the Holy Family rested under in Matareya. Christ also caused a spring to rise up in the area. So that tree is also there. I'm sure many of you guys may have visited it. But so there was a spring there, and the tree there, tradition says that the Holy Family rested under this tree. And so this tree is still there, and people go, and it used to be that the Christians would take pieces of the bark from the tree, and it would cause miracles and stuff. Again, because of what Christ did, it increased the faith of the people in Egypt and the Christians in Egypt. The next place that they traveled to was in Old Cairo. There is a church there dedicated to St. Sergius and St. Bacchus. And on top of, or under that church, there's this cave. And the Holy Family spent much time in this cave. It's an ancient cave. You don't really go down there, but so the church is built on top of it. And so we still have the remnants of the Holy Family's visit in that place. And so once again, the Holy Family was forced to travel quickly. So they went along the Nile from where St. Sergius' church is down to El Maadi, and there's this church there now. It's also dedicated to the Virgin St. Mary. It's, as you can see, on the Nile. It's a nice big church. So when the Holy Family was in Cairo, again, Christ caused the stones and the idols to be toppled. And so the people again got angry, and so the Holy Family was rushed down into this place, and then they crossed over the Nile. That's why Maadi means crossing. And there is a church at that point where the crossing is, dedicated to St. Mary in Maadi. And then they went down the Nile River, so that's the Nile River here, down into this place. And as they were going, there's a tradition. As the Holy Family sails from the Nile from El Maadi, tradition holds that a rock fell from the mountain and the hand of the Lord stopped it from crushing the boat. The imprint of the Lord's hand was left on the rock. So they called it Gabal el-Kaf. So as the tradition goes that someone pushed a rock to try to crush the boat where the Holy Family was, and Christ stuck out his hand and stopped it. That rock isn't there anymore. Tradition says that someone, like a king from Syria, came and took it. But that's where it comes. And so this is also traditionally the Lord passed through these places. And then they came down even further south to the last place that we'll talk about is Dir al-Muharraq. The Holy Family spent the most time here. Is what now is a monastery dedicated to the Virgin Mary. It is believed that it was built over the ancient cave where the Archangel Gabriel appeared to St. Joseph and told him that it was safe to return to Israel. So they spent probably the most time here. Overall, they probably spent a couple of years in Egypt, and they spent the most time here in this cave, staying and waiting. Again, they were not scared because the Lord obviously was with them. But there's this beautiful monastery now there, and you can see all of these things. And again, the archaeology says that there's a cave under them where they stayed. So, like a little conclusion, like I said, this is our special feast. It's important to us for multiple reasons, like I said before. But I want you guys to think of this idea of protection and how we take someone in. When we take someone into our homes, we protect them from anything that goes on outside. So this idea of the feast also is that Egypt protected Christ. It was his protection place. The country held him dear. It kept him safe. It protected him. It meant that this thing that was hiding inside Egypt was important, it was valuable, it was precious. And so it's also a reminder to us about the preciousness of Christ in our own heart. When Christ enters into our heart, he's a precious thing. The Spirit that dwells within us is precious and valuable. We don't just give it away. We don't just ignore it. We don't just imagine that it's not there anymore. We protect it. We keep it safe. We acknowledge its presence. And so if there's anything that this feast can teach us, is that this Spirit that dwells within us, the Spirit of the Lord that dwells with each and every one of us, is something that we hold dear. The way that we hold it dear is that we don't embarrass the Spirit that dwells within us. So we don't go to places, for instance, that the Spirit that dwells within us wouldn't feel comfortable. That would be like shameful to do that to the guest that lives within us. This guest also has the power to make us be different. So it's not just that we take the Spirit in and we just hafiz alayh, but actually we let the Spirit work through us. And when we let the Spirit work through us, everything that we do and we say and we touch and we feel and we speak, it's as if the Spirit himself is doing that. He does it instead of us. And so the good Christian person, especially the Copt that remembers that we first protected the Lord, remembers that the Spirit that dwells within you first is something precious and valuable. You don't give it away. You don't embarrass it by going to places or saying things or putting yourself into difficult situations. But on the opposite, you nurture the Spirit within you by prayer and fasting and communion and good deeds and love and compassion. If we do these things, then the Spirit, instead of being just a guest or something that we have inside of us and we forget about, becomes something that works through us to be better and better and better. We often look at the saints and we say, wow, how could they do these things? At the very least, the Spirit that lives within us was allowed to perform good works, was allowed to do the things that Christ wishes to do through us. The last thing I want to focus on is really praying that the Lord give us this Spirit to allow us to do what's right and allow us to do good things at all times. To not be afraid of the hustle and bustle that's around us, to not be concerned about what our friends or our co-workers or our family members even, or other people that we know are doing. We are protected and special. We protect the Spirit that dwells within us, and we ask the Lord to work through us in a kind way, in a nice way, so that, like I said, when we do works, we do the works that the Spirit wishes for us to do. And the best way to do that is to literally ask. Tonight, before you go to sleep, you ask the Lord and you say, Lord, work through me so that I can do good things, and not just bad things all the time, and not just negative things, and not just things that are the world's. Let me do things that are spiritual, that are full of the Spirit that dwells within me. Remember this, to protect the Spirit that dwells within you, and remember this feast and be happy and proud. It's such a joyous feast because Christ didn't visit any other country except Israel and Egypt. When he came here, he made us a special chosen nation. He planted the seed of our faith. And that's why we still have all these things that we go to. This is just a few of the places that the Lord visited and the Holy Family visited. May the Lord continue to help us to grow His Spirit within us and let the Spirit work through us so that we may always do good deeds and protect the Spirit that dwells within us. And glory be to God forever.